Hi everyone, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about target markets and help you define your target market. To begin with, let's talk about why we need target markets. The most important aspect of thinking about your target market is the fact that you don't have enough time to pursue every prospect that may or may not need your product and services. So by defining a target market, we can help eliminate some of the challenges we face of not having enough time. Sales is simply a numbers game based upon an average response rate to convert a prospect to a customer. It may take talking to 100 people to get one sale, and if we develop a target market, we could easily improve the odds to 1 in 50 or even down to 1 in 10. While everybody is potentially a customer, you don't have time to pursue every prospect. A target market breaks down the market into segments that you can aim your products and service towards and develop specific marketing messages to address those people's needs. Target markets increase the odds for success because you're contacting prospects who are more likely to need your products and services than not. We're simply improving the odds. I like to think about, what does my target market look like? How can I get a sense for who these people are? So here's some just quick Google searches I did for imagery, looking at, what if my target market was a lawyer? What if it was an architect? And can I imagine what those people's needs are for my products and services? If I'm working in commercial advertising, who are my art director clients? What are they thinking about? What kind of response do they look for? Am I a portrait photographer focusing on families? What do these families look like? What are their needs? What are their different lifestyle activities? These are all ways we can visualize who we're trying to reach with our products and services. Is my target market an adventure sports person? Are they a skier, a rock climber, a kayaker? How can I find a shared value and a shared interest with my target market? So again, I'm just trying to imagine, what does my target market look like? To begin thinking about my target market, I'm going to look at myself. What problems am I solving by doing the work that I'm doing? What characteristics and values do I share? Because the process of converting any prospect to a customer involves them getting to first know us, second, like us, and third, trust us enough to invest in our products and services. So I think it helps to just start with looking at, who am I? By going through this exercise of trying to define our target market, it helps us anticipate what our clients are looking for. What are their needs, wants, and desires? It also helps us design our marketing message so that we can address the specific pain points that drive them to seek your products and services. People that are content don't buy products and services. People are looking to solve problems. They're looking for a solution, and we have to anticipate, what is our target market's problem that they have enough of a pain point around that they are seeking to buy a solution to that problem. We need to be able to anticipate exactly what our target market's looking for and why, so that we can identify what problems we can solve for them. That's the only thing that's going to inspire them to buy from me. We have to solve a problem. So what is a target market? Target market is the prospects in the marketplace that are segmented based upon behavioristic factors, psychographic factors, demographic factors, geographic factors, and industry factors. It's just a model for the way that we can look at segmenting prospects in the marketplace. Gives us a model for us to be able to try to analyze and view and think about how to reach an audience that's more likely than not to need our products and services. The first segmentation model I like to look at is the behavioristic segmentation, because it relates directly to our mission statement. It relates directly to our products and services and what solutions we provide. And so looking at behavior segmentation, we're looking at the benefits that our clients are looking for, their usage rate, their brand loyalty. We want to look at whether we expect them to be a first-time customer, an ongoing repeat customer. There's some businesses where they're just looking to make one sale and they're done and they're moving on to the next prospect. Whereas I think what we need to be looking at from a boutique business standpoint is that we're developing a relationship with our clients. So we want repeat customers, regular intervals of purchasing from us. We look at their readiness to buy. Is there some event or occasion, such as a wedding coming up, that would inspire them to want to seek out photographic services or videography services? Is there a trade show that would want is there a trade show event that they need to have some product photography done for? What are the occasions that trigger the readiness to buy? And then one of my other favorite areas to look at are the psychographic segmentation of activities, interests, opinions, attitudes, and values. And this is where we can go back to our core value index and our branding archetype and figure out what are the ways in which we are similar to our target market, the way our products and services fit in their lifestyle, their values, their beliefs. And then also this helps me identify where might I come into contact when it comes to networking. Where can I meet up with prospective clients so that I'm spending my time wisely for building my business. I'd like to share with you that many years ago, a very successful businessman that I had dinner with pointed out something very critical to me. He said, "Ira, I'm only in my store 2 days a week. I can't stay in business if I'm just staying in my store. I have to be out in the community, introducing myself and driving people to my store." And I'd like to share with you that this person just retired after 32 years of an incredibly successful boutique business in men's clothing, in a men's clothing store in downtown Spokane. This is probably the most common area of segmentation, which is based on demographic segmentation. You know, if you're in the portrait business, you're definitely paying attention to factors like age, family size, family life cycle, and then we might also pay attention to generation characteristics, such as, you know, what are baby boomers looking for now that they're at retirement age versus a Gen X versus a millennial or a zennial. So we can look at some of those demographic breakdowns. And I think this is where a lot of retail businesses divide up their marketplace, where they look at occupation, education, and various factors in a community to decide whether to open a franchise or open a new business within that area. So these are useful tools for us. This is just one of many models out there for looking at your target market segmentation. Geographic factors, this goes back to our vision statement of where do we want to be in business, where do we want to work. Are our clients, are we going to reach across the worldwide, or are we going to reach North America? Where do you want to do business, and what kind of metropolitan region size do you need to have to support that business? Again, these are the kind of segmentation factors that a company like Starbucks or any sort of franchise business would really be paying attention to for deciding where to place new stores. Also, I would throw in there climate has an impact on the products and services that we sell, because if I were in the business of selling snow shovels, I would be very much concerned about selling my shovels in places where there's snow. And so climate can affect our business activity quite a bit. If I want to be an outdoor winter adventure sports person, it's kind of nice that here in the Spokane Coeur d'Alene metropolitan area we have 5 ski resorts within 2 hours of driving, and so I'm going to pay attention to that factor as well. Another way of looking at segmenting your market is through industry segmentation, where we need to decide, are we focusing on wholesale or retail, or am I servicing the corporate marketplace, or am I focusing on an industrial marketplace? And I will tell you, in my career, I started out with industry, moved to retail, and more recently I'm doing more wholesale, where I'm selling through fine art, prints and books, etc. Another industry segment we would look at is what kind of companies are we dealing with? Are we dealing with large companies, small companies? What specific industry might they be focused in? I might want to focus on craft brewing, or I might want to focus on bicycle shops, flower shops, any sort of specific industry that I want to focus my portfolio and my marketing efforts around. And then who's making the decision for these companies? Is it a marketing director? Is it the business owner themselves? Is it a committee, a board of directors? And what kind of purchasing criteria do they set as well? So I want to learn as much about my target market as possible. Years ago, when I was in the industrial sector, I used to keep a folder, file folder for each prospect that looked at what size the company was, who the key decision makers were, and what kinds of imagery and how often do they buy it. Some other factors we look at is location of these businesses. Again, am I looking at a local market only? Am I looking at a regional, national, international, etc.? And then I'm also looking at how often do these companies buy. When I was working in the industrial sector, I generally had 2 times a year that clients were looking for work because there were generally two big trade show seasons of the year where they needed to get their product out onto the marketplace. So I knew that there was about a 4-month lead time for producing new marketing material for trade shows that happened every 6 months. I used to keep track of that. So we look at usage rate. We look at, again, is this a prospect, first time, or repeating customer? And I just want to reiterate that as we grow our business, our repeating customers where we expect our greatest stability in our market to be. For example, there's a general rule that says most small businesses fail within the first 5 years, and that's because of the Pareto principle that says 80% of my revenue will be generated by 20% of my client base. So if you do the math, after 5 years, if I have 20% of my business every year coming from repeat customers, that leads to 100% of the revenue I need to stay in business. So I'm always trying to build those relationships. And so after about 5 years, I'm less focused on new prospects or first-time customers, and I'm more concerned about marketing to my existing client base. But when I'm starting out in business, I'm going to be looking at a buying status of starting with prospects and first-time buyers. I'll also give you another example of this. When I was in the portrait business in the retail market, I'll give you another example of this. When I was in the retail portrait business, I focused on new prospects that were coming into Spokane, moving to Spokane for the first time, because I knew if my fellow photographers were doing their job well, that it was going to be very expensive and very hard to compete against a satisfied customer with another photographer. So I emphasized a lot of my marketing on people that were moving to Spokane for the first time and needed a new photographer to work with. So I focused on first-time buyers quite a bit, and then I really focused on keeping my existing customers happy and get that built-in return business. Finally, we look at what is the purchasing procedure. Do I need to compete in a marketplace where it's a sealed bid, or is it a marketplace where I can give estimates and actually have discussions about those estimates and negotiate a price that's fair for both of us? And then what are the payment protocols? Do they pay a deposit and then final payment upon completion? Or is it like the ad agency businesses where you typically get a net 30 days, which really routinely runs out to about 90 days, which means I've got to front all the expenses up front for the job and sit and wait to get paid up to 90 days after I complete the work? Or is it payment upon publication? For example, if I'm shooting and publishing in a magazine and I'm shooting in June for the December issue, I may not get paid until January because they'll do payment upon publication. So I need to pay attention to those purchasing procedures so that I can look at my overall strategy for financial management, as well as maybe building up multiple target markets that can balance out those payment structures for me. The most difficult experience I have in working with people around the idea of market segmentation is they feel like they're being put into a box. And in fact, this quote is really common, where somebody will say, but I pride myself on breaking any box anybody wants to put me into. And you see this graphic here that I found online that represents the idea of market segmentation as putting a lot of people into a lot of boxes. I want to assure you that yes, target marketing is about building a box, and in fact it's about taking a stereotypical view of the world of saying these are the typical people that I would expect to buy my products and services. I don't want you to think about target markets as putting yourself into a box and limiting yourself. I want you to think about it as you're building a custom box that fits you perfectly, and you're going to rinse and repeat. You're going to build a lot of different boxes to build up a successful business. Build a lot of boxes, build one for each product in your product mix, and this is how you diversify your portfolio. Treat each box as its own line of business. So here's how this really works. When you first start out, I'm going to encourage you to spend at least a full year developing your primary market. What is your niche specialization that you're going to get very good at? Build that box. And then in your second year, you're going to build a secondary market, and you're going to spend an entire year focusing your attention on building that up. And then third, you're going to develop another market. So you realize that over time, you're going to diversify your portfolio of lines of businesses to be able to build a more sustainable career. I've never told anybody that they should only do one thing. I've always said that they need to do one thing really well to start out with, and then they need to go back and add additional markets one at a time as they build those skill sets up. So to build a single market takes approximately a year. You need to define the market, develop the portfolio for that market, develop the packaging and the products and services for that market, and ultimately you need to develop the workflow so that you can become better and more efficient at the quality of work that you're doing. After you've built a successful career, your boxes are going to look a lot more attractive to you, and they're going to be various sizes based upon the mix of your business. You're still going to have one primary source of income, your biggest market, but you're going to have these other smaller boxes that really help balance out the variations in the marketplace over the years. And so don't worry about too much specialization at this point in your career. I think people who struggle with the idea of doing something more than once rather than doing something new each and every time really struggle with the idea of target marketing. But I want to encourage you to realize that actually even generalist commercial photographers really develop individual lines of businesses so that they can have effective marketing and advertising. Here's a quote from Jules Design based out of Toronto, Canada, where she says, "It's important to make it easy for your clients to find you and to make as many roads that lead to your business as possible. I will also note that I do not offer just one generalist photography service. I create multiple pages that link to specific niche markets." So here's a generalist photographer telling us that when it comes to marketing and advertising, develop niche target markets, and then the combination builds that general business, but you're advertising more effectively to each segment of your market. Remember this, if you're known for doing one thing really well, people will assume that you can do anything well. So defining a target market doesn't limit the work that you do. Now I want to give you a little scenario here, and I want you to imagine that you own an import car that needs repair work. Okay, there's a person that's ready to buy a product or service. They've got a broken down import car. You've got a couple of choices. One option would be to find your local independent mechanics garage that says, "We fix any car." And some people would go that route because they think it might be a little less expensive per hour. The shop rate might be lower per hour. But on the other hand, there's a possible con of that it might take longer to diagnose the problem because of the extra research needed for each different make or model. The second option would be to take your import car to an import car specialist, a specialized garage, or even the dealership that sold that car to you, because they're going to be able to provide faster, accurate repair with less likely to have to return for more work or more diagnosis because they've seen it before over and over and over. That repetitiveness becomes second nature. They might cost more, but in the end, they actually might end up being cheaper because it might take fewer shop hours to do the same amount of work. Now let's take this scenario another step further. You might have to choose between an experienced mechanic or an inexperienced mechanic. We all know that you're entering the marketplace with less experience than your competition. I bring this up because you're going into the marketplace in a very inexperienced position, and the other people you're competing with have a lot more experience than you. So this is another argument for specialization, because let's look at this. Most customers could comfortably choose a very experienced mechanic and have the expectation that they can do pretty much anything they say they can do. They've had a lot of experience. However, if you're just entering the marketplace, the great equalizer is going to be the inexperienced mechanic who's specialized in one make of car, and that happens to be the car that I need repairing. That's why specialization is extremely important at this point in your career, at the beginning of your career. By specializing, it is an equalizer when you're putting yourself out in a marketplace that has a lot more experienced competitors. Let's take a look at some photographers. Some are well known, some you may not have heard of before. And let's see if we can tell what their attitude is about target marketing. To begin with, let's take a look at Tony Rosalyn. Now, Tony's changed his site recently, but I can tell you right now, if I just look at the photos, I'm noticing a lot of architecture, particularly interior and exterior architecture photography. If I go to the top of his page, I love his tagline where he's telling you a little bit about his mission, which is do average elsewhere. So he's telling you he's all about quality. So if I look at his menu, we see one of his target market is architecture. Another target market is food photography. And another market is videography, where he's doing video production to tell stories for business owners. Look at how many of these example videos he has in his portfolio, and notice how they have the same branding. They look like they've been done by the same company. Each of these markets has taken Tony at least 1 year to fully develop the portfolio, the marketing materials, and to build up the line of business to be successful. Now let's take a look at a fourth market, and this is the one that he's been working on perhaps the longest because it's the marketplace that requires the most work on branding and content, and that is the education market. And so when we look at Tony's work, we see that he is selling tutorials on product photography. Guess what, everybody? Before he did architecture, food, and video, he focused on tabletop product photography. But after spending a lot of time doing that work, he decided to change courses. He's moved his location, he's moved his studio, he's jettisoned a lot of his equipment that specialized in product photography, but he retains that knowledge and he's selling that knowledge through his tutorials on product photography. So again, this is a great example where I want to share with you that just because you develop one target market doesn't mean you're stuck there your whole career. You're going to move like a sailboat, tacking in one direction for a while and then another. You're going to build one target market up and then you're going to switch and develop another target market, and you're going to add to your assets as a business. You've got all this intellectual property that has real value. He's building tutorials, he's giving workshops. That's the newest thing that he's starting to do, in-studio workshops. He has a YouTube channel and he has a podcast as well. So, and one of the interesting things about podcast is they have a 66% retention rate of people that start listening to a podcast stick with it. There's tremendous brand loyalty, and podcast listeners have income to spend, and they do a lot of buying from the brands and vendors that they listen to. So that is a very strategic market niche that Tony is developing. Very, very impressive. Let's take a look at another photographer. Here's a portrait photographer, Crystal Madsen. And I will tell you that her market started out, and you can tell by the top. By the way, as we look at Crystal's website, I want you to notice that the site title on the tab above in your web browser, look at how Tony has a EDU. So that tells you what his primary emphasis is right now, is he's focusing on education. And you notice how he's using that kind of red cross symbol to say, hey, he's going to teach you how to get out of a jam and teach you really great photography skills. So that's his branding. Here we look at Crystal Madsen, who's a successful local portrait photographer, and you can tell that you can tell from the title that she started out in specializing in boudoir and wedding photography. And notice how boudoir and wedding often goes hand in hand. There's a lot of synergy because for brides, it's very often about being the most beautiful time of your life, to look your very best for your wedding. And then we also see boudoir from the standpoint of a romance gift that is shared with couples as well. So you see product synergy here, right? And you look at the website and you see that it's very much branded for wedding and boudoir photography. And then you see some secondary and tertiary markets of family, commercial headshots, etc. And then the thing that she does really quite nicely is if you go to her about video page, you can see where she has really nailed it on developing another line of business that is focused on high school senior portraits. So here's another line of business that Crystal has developed recently, which is really focused on high school seniors, and she's telling that story very effectively through video storytelling. And so let's just take a couple of minutes and watch this.
The main thing that I pride myself in is really getting to know my kids. That way I know exactly what their style is, what their fashion is, what they're into. The athletes, the musicians, and some kids who don't do the extracurricular activities. The diversity between all the seniors is a fun challenge. 1, 2, 3. Good. Knowing that I'm helping a teenager capture the most important time of their life in that moment, it's exhilarating. I'm going out of my way to get a shot that's never been done before, that no other studio is going to be able to get.
Those are awesome.
I'm really good and well known for my dramatic shots, kind of the sunset and the athletic. But then when my parents do come into the consultations, I'll tell them you're going to get a little bit of sample of everything. You're going to get the nice close-up cute photos. You're going to get the playful photos, and then you're going to get the dramatic. So it's kind of just touching a little bit of everything.
How do you feel?
A senior can expect a free consultation. You'll come in here into my studio and meet with me for about 30 minutes to discuss exactly what we want to do for your session. We're going to talk about who you are, what activities you do, what type of student you are, what areas of town that you like, that you feel that represent you well. We're going to spend about an hour and a half to 2 hours per location. And then once the session's over, we'll go through the edited images on our screen here in the studio. Senior photos can be an all-day event, especially for girls. If they want to go get their makeup done, that's the beginning of your day. For girls, I do recommend getting professional makeup done. Whether you have perfect skin or not, it's important because you just want the even skin tones. You don't want heavy eye makeup. You don't want fake lashes. You want to look like you.
Perfect.
For each location, I recommend a senior bring at least 2 to 3 outfits. You don't want to wear anything that you're not comfortable in. You're going to be wearing it for about an hour or so. So something that you can easily get in, get out, and look awesome in. The comment that I receive again and again from the seniors and their parents is just how much fun we have.
Excellent. Good job.
How comfortable I make the seniors feel. That is what makes photography worth doing.
All right. I think we got some winners.
So just get a hold of me however you want. Email, phone, Facebook, and let's book up a consultation and get rolling.
All right, that's really effective branding for her. And notice how, even though she's doing high school senior photos and she included a couple of male models in that video, the majority of it is overwhelmingly female. And you notice how that product synergy, because the high school senior then becomes the bride and also the boudoir client later on. So she's building a very synergistic brand. You notice how she used the pink in her logo. Notice how she ended the video with the pink seamless paper rolling down. Very, very effective. But it's taken a lot of years to build this up. And in fact, if we look at her about page, you'll learn that it spent a lot of time building 10 years to get to this point. So another example of why defining a solid target market to begin with, working on that for a year, build the next model, build the next target market, and work on that another year, and you will build up your brand and your inventory of lines of businesses to be successful. Let's take a look at another studio, Ebert Studios, and we will actually spend a little time with this as well. Because what I want you to notice on the portrait end, you notice it's a lot easier to kind of identify demographic segments of, high school seniors are going to be that 17 to 18-year-old age. Children are going to be at different life cycle stages, etc. But here's a photographer that is clearly focused on family groups, which is a very, very nice marketplace. Their website and their branding is spot on for their target market of family groups, because they've worked with a marketing professional to really hone their message. You notice that they're focused on groups. They're focused on really large gallery, museum quality portraits. You'll notice that the location of their business is in a historic home. And they just go they've got a family business from over 100 years, and the current owner is 25 years of experience. It's a very traditional quality portrait. Their branding is very strong with the personalized script typeface for their name, with a very clean fine art portraiture. So their name says it all. And let's take a look at the video.
A client comes in here with higher expectations today than they ever did. That they will look good. That's their main concern. It's a really huge deal to have your legacy captured in a way that you will look your best. These portraits of your family will be passed on for generations. And so your children will have that reminder of the love that the family shared and the love that they were reminded of for years to come. This home/studio is really a landmark in Oak Park. It's a 115-year-old house. The comfort of it, the character of it, the history of it, the natural light opportunities in it, I can't imagine not being in this space. The way that we light, it's what we call a Rembrandt style of lighting. I like to say it's reminiscent of the old masters. So we've created an outdoor space and an indoor space where we could use natural light solely. And what that does is it allows us to have an interaction with you that is uninhibited by anything technical. When you go to any place that's been around for a long time, there's just a level of trust. And then with history comes experience. I think the magic here is really in personality and the way that we work with people. The comfort and the expressions really tell the story of the family. When people work with me, they can expect there be no judgment. It's the best way to get the most relaxed expression and body language out of anybody. I love that no two sessions are the same. You will have a family with all sorts of ages, with all sorts of different personalities that makes me reach and use everything I have to cater to each personality. I could be silly, I could be serious, all in the same session. My favorite part is seeing the expression on people's faces when it's completely done. There's a sense of pride that people have when they hang their Ebert portrait, that we represented the relationships in the family in the best possible way. And I love that I could be a part of that moment. People are more and more seeing that this portrait hanging in their home is not just a representation of the family and the relationships, but it's a beautiful piece of art.
So as you see, everything about this is looking at a completely different market segment than, say, Crystal Manson. It's located in a suburb of Chicago. It's addressing a target market that's going to include grandparents who might be the ones funding a lot of these portraits, because I guarantee you these are not inexpensive. These are a significant investment in these photographs. And this is where I like to also share with you this idea that's been presented in business circles of how it's easier to be a Ruth Christie steakhouse than it is to be a McDonald's. That you actually do less work and you make more money per client because you're doing one thing really well. And so you notice this brand and this studio is focused almost exclusively on group portraits. That's what they're known for, although you see on their walls that they do individual portraits as well. So they're known for one thing, they get other types of work in it as well. Very well situated, a very clear target market. There's going to be demographic factors in there about income level, social status. They've got it dialed in. And then I'm going to look at another one that's very similar to that, and that's Bradford Studios. And the reason I bring them up is not because they're stylistically different than the Ebert studio, but rather I want to point out something about their target market. If you look at their client testimonials, which we call these proof points, and we'll be dealing with this in portfolio development class where we actually work on a website for you. But if you look at their proof points, these are executives, part owner of the Chicago Bulls and Chicago White Sox, former chairman of Sony Music, chairman owner of Brooks Brothers, CEO. That is the target market. When we talk about a target market avatar, this is a photographer who is focused on CEOs and head of business organizations. And this photographer has, I believe, 3 locations. New York, Palm Beach, Costa Mesa. So when we think about geographic factors, this photographer is focused in New York, Florida, so East Coast, and Costa Mesa in California, West Coast. He's identified those are the areas where he wants to do his work, and he's nailed it. He's making a tremendous income and supporting a lot of employees while he's at it. So these are some examples of target marketing. And now I want to help you think about how can you go about figuring out a target market that fits you. And that's where I want to also share with you this idea that when it comes to a business class, it's very different than a traditional class where it's one instructor in a classroom full of students sharing the same information. With this particular class, it's one instructor, one student trying to come together and develop a custom solution that's going to help you make a career doing something you absolutely love. So we want to start with looking at who you are and what your mission is and develop some behavioristic and industrial factors. We want to look at your core value index and your brand archetype and list those traits under psychographic factors. And then we want to look at your pricing model and list some demographic factors. And then finally, we want to look at your vision and develop some geographic factors as well. Where do you want to live? Where do you want to work? So I decided to, I had a great conversation with Corey this week, and I really appreciate that, Corey. And believe it or not, I couldn't believe it. I found your portrait sitting on a motorcycle for West Coast Choppers. And I make that kind of humorous tongue-in-cheek reference because guess what? When I talk to Corey, I see nothing but Southern California culture. He's got the flannel shirts, the baseball hat, tattoos, and a very independent attitude. And so when we start thinking about who is an appropriate target market for Corey, this is kind of what it looks like. So here's where I just kind of went through an exercise for us to see what building a custom target market might look like for somebody who says, I want to be a generalist, I want to treat every customer as a unique job, and so where do I go from here, Ira? Well, first of all, we're dealing with heritage of Southern California culture. That's something I'm very familiar with, having grown up there in my early years as well. He collects craft beer. If I were to guess his brand archetype, I don't remember what it is, but I know creator is one of them, and with his interest in lighting, I'm guessing also magician and maybe a little bit of maverick in there. But I think you can build a blend of those archetypes pretty well. Core value index, innovator banker is where I would guess him to be because he's very creative, but also very much wants to know the right way to do things. And so he's going to be very detail oriented, which lends itself really well to the idea of craft. Again, his style includes a lot of baseball hats, flannel shirts, hoodies, and tattoos on the forearm. So it's a very classic look. And then emotional traits that I see in Corey are independent and creative, and he's also a veteran. So now, how do we segment a market and find a market for Corey? Well, look at some potential industry factors such as craft beer, such as custom cars and motorcycles, tattoo artists, clothing companies. And when you think about this, the unifying factor is that Southern California attitude and that total commitment to handmade custom craftsmanship. And that is something that is so powerful in Southern California. So when I also look at some potential markets, I think of not only the craft breweries, custom cars, and motorcycles, but also board shops, skateboard, and then locally it might be snowboard, surfboards, pretty much that independent board shop attitude, tattoo artists, and clothing company. And again, the unifying factor is those characteristics associated with SoCal culture and custom craftsmanship. That becomes this umbrella to look at. So when we start looking at what does the segmentation look like, well, the behavioristic segmentation could look something like this, where people are looking for imagery that communicates handmade craftsmanship. And I would estimate that they would need it about quarterly, because they're going to be artists. They're going to be always coming out with new things, focus on new. And so I'd say every 3 to 4 months, they're going to need some new portfolio images, new marketing materials. And ideally, he's going to be looking for clients that are going to be clients for life. They're going to be his friends, his buddies, people he hangs out with. And they're going to be heavily motivated whenever they're ready to showcase new work. The occasions that might influence when they need photographs might be trade shows, car shows, art shows, etc. Psychographic segmentations, you'll see a recurring theme here: car clubs and shows, motorcycle clubs and shows, craft beer events, art shows, maybe tattoo shows as well. And again, all those things are based upon shared interest. And then I'd say the opinions of SoCal are going to be kind of that fiercely independent, like a caged tiger mentality. Don't tell me what I can or can't do. Going to be fiercely independent. And they're going to have that do-it-yourself culture of, hey, I'll make it work. And then they're going to have the value of diversity. That's one of the things I love about going back down to Southern California, is that I see such a great cultural diversity. Hispanic, Asian, African American, you name it, it's there, and you can fit in. I love that about SoCal, and that there's going to be creativity, going to be incredible loyalty, and a strong sense of family. And again, we see that even with the sort of gang behavior. I once photographed a gang member in my studio and had a fantastic conversation where I asked, what led you to join one of the big gangs? And he said, because they're my family. And so I would say that that's a big part of this branding as well. So then we look at demographic segmentation, and I'm looking at an age range of probably 25 to 55. Those are going to be the most active small business owners. I think 25 is going to be a pretty typical age that maybe some people get out of the military and start their own thing. And that he's going to probably relate strongest to male figures, probably have 1 or 2 kids. They're going to be in a family lifestyle, everything from full nest to late stage and empty nest. And he's probably going to relate to either Gen X or early millennial the best, and an income factor of at least $60,000 per year, so they're very successful in their business, and that's their take-home pay. That's not their business income. And these are going to be people that are small business owners and craftsmen. They might have some college. He's not going to be excluding any ethnic group. You find this trait in every ethnic group. And when I looked at the typical demographic, talking about nationality, I call it the Republic of California, because there is just this mindset that they are a distinct part of the world, and that this SoCal culture is going to be very much focused on a independent, blue-collar, working-class business. Geographic, be focused on North America, more specifically West Coast, and because he lives in Spokane, the Pacific Northwest as well. Metropolitan area size of about 500,000 or greater would support the kind of work that he's looking to do. Be more likely to occur in an urban climate or an urban environment, and an all-season climate, since he's going to also be addressing the fact that he's starting out here in Spokane. Looking at industry segmentation, I would see this as being applicable to both wholesale, industrial, and retail. One of the things I would do if I were Corey is I would do a Google search for businesses that have the word custom in their name. And that might be the brand that he's really looking for to develop anyways. Looking for people that are custom, hands-on workers. Smaller company, 1 to 10 employees. Custom manufacturing, the business owner is going to be the buck stops with them. They're the decision maker, and they're going to look for purchase criteria of custom artwork. That they're going to look at a purchase criteria of looking for photographs that look like art to represent their craftsmanship. And again, the location is going to be inland. The location will be inland Pacific Northwest to begin with, but I could see it eventually expanding to Southern California. It's not hard to do business in a lot of different places. And as I've already stated, the usage rate, the buying status, etc. So So now I want to write a description of what the target market avatar would be, and I just wrote this. I said Corey Henderson is a Spokane-based photographer targeting craft business owners who represent Southern California attitudes and visual culture. Corey is initially focused on clients within the Inland Pacific Northwest who are originally from Southern California. There's a lot of transplants up here. I was skiing the other day, sitting on a chairlift with a person who just moved to Coeur d'Alene from San Diego. They own 7 RV dealerships and they customize RVs as well. And they moved up here for the lifestyle. There's a lot of Californians in Spokane and in the Pacific Northwest. So I think that's pretty reasonable to build that avatar based upon a shared background. His ideal client would be a male aged 25 to 55 who is a small, independent, artisan business owner focused on handcrafted products such as customized cars, motorcycles, tattoos, art, and craft beverages. The prototypical client would be someone who gets their hands dirty making something unique. Their style would include flannel shirts, hoodies, snapback hats that are representative of SoCal attitudes. And then, guess what? One of Corey's recent projects includes a artist profile video, and look at the image of the artist who's got the familiar background story of having lived in California, who's got kids that are out of high school, and who has returned to making really great custom art. That is such a prototypical client that Corey would want to work with. So I hope this gives you some ideas of where to go in developing your custom market and figuring out how to segment a huge world of possibilities and narrow it down to a target market that will give you the highest chance of success. Where do we actually go to find our target market? Well, there are companies out there designed to help us. Once we identified who we need to contact, the way we get a hold of them might involve an email campaign, a direct mail campaign, as well as some networking activities that we talk about in another assignment. If you're a portrait photographer, you have to know about Marathon Press. Marathon Press provides all kinds of marketing materials. They do printing, they do email campaigns. You can buy a mailing list from them. They are just, you want to spend some time on this website because they have absolutely focused on how to market to all the different segments that a portrait photographer could possibly need to connect with. If you're a commercial photographer, then you need to know about agency access. So here we are in agency access, and I'll just be share with you that I spend about $1,300 a year on accessing their databases. And with their databases, I get access to both the North American Fine Art database of all the galleries in North America, gallery owners, etc. But also I get access to the North American Print database, and these are all the editorial publications, graphic design agencies, where I can contact these people and solicit them for jobs. So let's go ahead and do a search here for a database. If I was focused on architecture, I'd have to buy that list separately, but you can see that I can look for ad agencies, I can look for fine art, I can look at graphic design, I could look at in-house corporate, cosmetics, fashion, travel, magazines in general, and then I can look at making sure that I'm only talking to people that actually hire photographers and maybe stock photography. I think there's a time and place for both email and direct mail, and in fact I usually try to start out with a direct mail piece before I contact somebody with email, because I want to send them a postcard that they can't not see the image on the front of the postcard. As they're going through the mail, they'll see them, maybe I'll grab their attention, I'll get some name recognition, and then when I send an email, they'll recognize the name and they're more likely to open that email instead of automatically deleting it or moving it to their spam folder. Again, I can focus on North America, or I could focus just in the United States, and I can even come in here and focus regionally. So I might just say I want the West Coast. I'll do the West Coast, and that actually covers this entire area here. And I can go ahead, I could specialize in some metro areas if I wanted to. And let's just take a look at what we have. Now I can get even more specific by looking at job titles, and that's where building a more complete avatar of your target market is going to help you know who you really want to talk to. So I want to talk to an art director, creative director, and I actually think sometimes it's helpful to talk to a creative assistant as well as a graphic designer because those are people that are going to be influential in choosing me for a job. And then we can get into specialty areas, and again, look at this. If I was looking for beer and wine or beverages, in this case I might go ahead, sport and leisure. Let's say I was a snowboard photographer, I'd probably look for sport and leisure in here. I'm going to focus on travel, and I'm going to also look at corporate. And I'd probably break these into separate mailing lists, but I'm just showing you just how this works. And now I've got a list here where I've got 3,175 contacts from 1,400 companies that I could download this list as well. So I'm just going to select all. And I'm going to finish, and I'm going to just call this my West Coast Travel and Corporate list. And then I'm going to save that list. And then I can download that list. And I'm going to download this as a tab separated text file or an Excel spreadsheet. I'll go ahead and choose the Excel spreadsheet. And here is my list: first name, last name, title. I can do anything I need to do to use this information to contact these people and show them examples of my work and solicit a job from them. So there's agency access. Let's go back to our target market here, and now let's take a look at, let's say I wasn't looking for art directors for ad agencies or magazine publishers or book publishers, and I'm looking for something very specific. Maybe I want to find bicycle shops because I've really specialized on bicycles in my portfolio, maybe mountain bikes, urban cruisers, you name it. Well, there's a company called Info USA that sells industry-based mailing list as well as consumer mailing list. And so you can see that you can get a list of business emails, new businesses, etc., and you can get a segmented list as well. So this is another vendor that's available to you. And then I'm going to say, you know what, look at Google. And let's say I wanted to focus on craft, I'll just say breweries in Spokane. Okay. And I'm just going to hit the more places, and I'm just going to have to go through each of these and add their go to their websites, and I will build my address list manually. This is where having an intern can be really helpful for building a effective mailing list. Your prospect mailing list is the most important business asset you can have because it is the best way for you to reach out and show people your work. So I would have to go to each individual website, and I'd have to go in and get that information directly from the site. Now here is, they've gotten a little smart about this. They don't necessarily want you to have their email address, but that's not going to stop me because what I can do is I can go to View Developer and View Source, and I will do a search for the @ symbol. And here is the mailing list, info@irongoatbrewing.com. Okay. I can also get their other links as well. So if I'm very serious about trying to get a hold of somebody, I will find that information in their website HTML code. I also look at trade journals. For example, in the Spokane, Coeur d'Alene area, the Spokane Journal of Business puts out an annual book of list that identifies key contacts within certain industry segments. When I was doing corporate industrial work, this became a very important list for my business. Every year I would cull that list, and I would build individual contact files for each prospect that I knew I wanted to talk to. So you can see the list of types of businesses and what they sell those lists for. Information is valuable. You'll notice if I want to get all the contact info for the golf industry, it's going to cost me $10 to buy that list, right? And then you'll also note that I've included links to the Spokane City website that gives you the list of all new business owners that are offered up each week. So that's another way that you can troll and get new businesses. If you're focused on first-time buyers and prospects, that would be a good place to start looking for a target market. That said, the very, very best way to meet a new client is face-to-face. When I can meet a client face-to-face and hand them my business card, I'm building a rapport with that person so that when I then follow up with an email or a letter or a direct mail piece, they know who it's coming from and they're more likely to read it. And we're going to talk a lot about this next quarter in our portfolio development. Your prospect and client list is absolutely the single most important asset you have. Well, there you have it. That's a summary of how we can analyze and build our target market so that we can have a higher chance of success once we're out there in the field making a living, doing the thing that we love most. Thank you so much for watching. Please keep sending your questions in, and please understand that I'm here to help each and every one of you one-on-one to come up with the best career plan for you. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.